The campground is now closed as investigators look for a killer. They're urging anyone with information to come forward.
You're a smart guy, and that's a dangerous combination, cold-blooded and smart.
The 22nd of June 2018. Malibu Creek State Park, 4:45 a.m. The sun was about to rise over this picturesque part of California. Malibu Creek State Park was used for many popular films and shows, Planet of the Apes, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and MASH, to name just a few. No longer filled with movie sets and trailers, it was now occupied by people camping, hiking, and anyone looking to enjoy the great outdoors. One of those campers was a woman named Lauren, who was on a trip with friends from her church. After going to bed at about 11 p.m, she described it as super quiet. Then, in the early hours of the morning, she had been startled awake by the sound of gunfire. She waited, thinking maybe a kid had got hold of a toy gun. I was wide awake and I was just trying to listen very carefully, and I didn't hear anything, and I thought, should I go up and check? But something kept me from doing that, and I'm really glad I didn't. She was obviously frightened, but she had no idea of the horror that was unfolding, just 50 yards away. Another man, Scott, was there with his children, his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law's young daughters. He too had heard a loud popping sound, similar to a firework. He also saw a flash of light. Then, he heard one of his nieces crying. He waited, thinking that his brother-in-law, Tristan, would comfort her, but there was nothing. He immediately got up and went to the tent to find out what was going on. Tristan's 2-year-old was saying, "Wet, wet," as Scott tried to talk to them and work out what had happened. He was trying to wake Tristan up, and then suddenly, he felt his hand was wet. As he turned Tristan's phone on, he saw it was blood. Tristan was lying dead next to his 2 little girls, who were kneeling in a pool of his blood. He reached to try and find a pulse but couldn't. He then took the girls out of the tent and started calling out for other campers for help. Someone came over, giving Scott a chance to go back and check on Tristan. I noticed there was nothing in his eyes. I realised he was gone. He also noticed a small hole in the tent. Another camper, Stacy, had also heard the unmistakable sound of gunshots, and then a child crying, followed by a man calling out for help. Describing the sound of the child, she said it was a very mournful cry for Daddy over and over again. As she called 911, she whispered what was happening, not wanting to alert the shooter to her tent. Stephen was the pastor of the church that Lauren had gone camping with, and he too was there that night. His sleep had been undisturbed, but the next morning he was woken by a sheriff's deputy. He asked a bunch of questions. The primary question was everyone safe inside the tent? He asked if anybody was missing from the area or inside our tent. It was so early in the morning I thought maybe somebody had been a bad neighbour to the community, and they were trying to figure out what had happened. I did not think somebody had been murdered. That somebody was 35-year-old Tristan Beaudette, a devoted married father of 2 little girls, aged 2 and 4. Multiple rounds had been fired into the tent from the outside, in what appeared to be a random act of violence. Tristan Thomas Beaudette had been born in Fresno and had a truly fulfilling life. He was married to Erica, his high school sweetheart, whom he had been with since he was 18 years old, and he was a devoted father to their children. He was described as someone who was universally loved. He enjoyed cooking, hiking, snowboarding, and anything that involved being outside. Tristan was also a hard worker and a research scientist in Orange County. He had always loved science and had a huge passion for nature and the great outdoors. He was academically gifted too. In 1997, he had got first place in the bioprocessing lab of the Science Olympiad and was also valedictorian. He would later earn a PhD in chemistry from the University of California, Berkeley, and his wife Erica was a resident in gynecology and obstetrics at the University of California, Irvine. Life for the family was busy but exciting. Erica had her medical board exam coming up, and they were due to move to San Francisco in just a week's time. Knowing that his wife needed time and space to study, Tristan grabbed a tent, packed up some provisions, and decided to do what he loved with his girls, go camping. And now, the hunt for his murderer was on.
The campground was nearly full. It's summer vacation.
Even with other campsites close by at Malibu Creek State Park, deputies say someone shot Beaudette just before 5 on Friday morning.
Like everything's pretty spread out. Like it's pretty quiet. Like I wouldn't expect like something to happen.
About 4:44 in the morning, the sheriffs received a 911 call and responded and found a male victim of a gunshot.
He was just a family man, and that's where he was geared for, just to take care of his family and be there for them.
Tonight, the iconic campground is closed, and with no suspect, the case of this murder mystery is wide open.
So many were in shock. Tristan was someone whose impact was enormous, so much so that his old science teacher had even paid tribute to him, saying he was one of the students that really stood out over her 35-year career in education. A fundraiser would raise over $100,000 for his family. When the news broke about what had happened, Erica's life had shattered in an instant. In everything that he did, Tristan was kind, selfless and giving, and had a natural ability to connect with just about anyone. Tristan rejoiced in sharing his love of the outdoors with his girls, and believed that campgrounds were the definition of a sanctuary where people could feel safe and secure. As the crime scene was cordoned off and interviews with other campers were carried out, it soon became apparent that this was not an isolated incident. It would emerge that people using the park had actually been terrorised by someone who had been shooting at cars driving by and people camping. The scale of it was shocking.
We now know at least 5 other shootings happened around the park in the last 2 years.
8 people would come forward saying that they had been shot at, the first going back to November 2016.
I tried to get up and just fell right through the hammock down to the ground. Obviously, this latest incident is just such a tragedy.
A man named James had been asleep in a hammock at the park and woke up to a sudden pain in his arm and a loud bang. He first thought maybe he'd been bitten by something, but then he realised he had actually been shot. He looked around and there was nobody there. He would later have to have surgery to remove the pellets embedded in his arm. The following week, shots had been fired into the sleeping area of a vehicle. There were also 3 occasions in 2017 where vehicles were shot at, but nobody was injured. One of which was a woman camping in her car with her boyfriend when she heard a loud bang and found a slug from a shotgun round in the back of the vehicle. She said if the shot had been just an inch higher, she would have been hit.
They immediately reported the incident to police.
The first thing the cop told me when he pulled up was, "This doesn't happen out here. It can happen anywhere, so you just have to be aware."
This is scary. This is scary.
Cece Woods is the editor-in-chief of the local Malibu. She has been reporting on different shooting incidents at Malibu Creek State Park.
Seeing that there was a pattern that looks like over a year now, there have been incidents, whether they're related or not, is inconsequential to me. This type of stuff doesn't normally happen here, but it's happening here, and it's happening now.
And 4 days before Tristan's murder, another man had been shot at in his car. These attacks had been reported to the park rangers, but no warning had been issued, and people had no idea of the risk or threat. There had also been a series of burglaries in Calabasas, including someone smashing into a vending machine and stealing food. Footage showed a man carrying what appeared to be a rifle, dressed all in black. People were understandably on edge, wondering when the shooter would strike next. "I've never so much as had a bike stolen," said one resident. "I wouldn't go out walking there now. Would you?" Deputies also stepped up patrols in the area to try and make people feel calmer. The days would turn into weeks, and the weeks would become months, and all of the questions about Tristan's murder would remain unanswered. A $30,000 reward was offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of his killer. For his family, especially his 2 little girls, the pain and confusion was indescribable. The family were rallying round as best they could to help them process what they had gone through. Tristan's stepfather said they understand that Daddy didn't wake up, and there was a lot of blood when they woke up with a lot of noise. "I'm hoping they will stay in camping in the great outdoors. "I don't want a tragedy like this to stop them from continuing to grow." Going through the park and the surrounding area, they were able to follow a series of clues from one of the burglaries that had taken place. A dog tracking a scent and a series of boot prints took them back to an encampment. There, on the 10th of October, they took a man into custody. Anthony Rauder was of no fixed address, and he had been living in the encampment at the park, in the hills behind the sheriff's station. He was a felon, on probation, and illegally in possession of a firearm. His sister said he had a history of mental health problems and had gone to live in that area as he couldn't cope with other people. He would use the facilities at the park to use the Wi-Fi and charge his phone. He had previously been to prison for possession of explosives, and then for possession of a loaded firearm, which, as he was a felon, was a criminal offence. His weapons charges dated back to 2006, and he had also been convicted of assault. In December 2018, he was sentenced to 6 months in prison for gun and ammunition violations, which was to run consecutively with a 160-day sentence for a probation violation. Then came the breakthrough that investigators had been hoping for months. Ballistics testing on the bullets that had killed Tristan, and also been fired at the man in his car 4 days before Tristan's murder, was found to be a match to the rifle found in Anthony's backpack. January 2019.
A man has been arrested for allegedly shooting a father who was camping with his 2 young daughters in California last year.
Anthony Rauder was charged with the murder of Tristan Beaudette, 10 counts of attempted murder, 2 of which were for Tristan's children, and 5 counts of armed burglary. He entered a plea of not guilty and was held on a $1.1 million bail. In May of that year, nearly 1 year since the murder, the park would reopen.
Not everybody, though, is convinced it's safe to go back to Malibu Creek State Park despite an arrest.
The park was shut down to campers until now.
I freaked out and I picked up the phone and I called my friends in law enforcement and I said, this is a big mistake.
Cece Woods is a neighborhood watchdog.
Over the last few months, there have been reports of shots fired. Not a lot, but enough to be concerned that activity was picking up again.
But a California park spokesperson told me since the murder last year, they have not received any reports of gunshots here. They consulted with LA County Sheriff's Department and determined there is no ongoing public safety risk. This group camps together a few times a year, and they plan to enjoy this holiday weekend.
We're not too concerned. I guess we'll keep a lookout if anything, but I think we're good.
They had this place to themselves initially, but expect to see a lot more campers here once word spreads the camping ban has been lifted.
The pre-trial proceedings would go on for years, and Anthony Rauder's disrespectful and abusive behaviour was extremely shocking and disruptive. During a hearing, he said he wanted to represent himself and not have legal counsel, but the judge wouldn't allow it or even entertain the idea. As a result, Anthony attacked a deputy and had to be physically restrained, and also threatened the judge. On other occasions, he had to be secured to his chair and wear a spit hood to curb his violent outbursts. He was also convicted of 2 felony counts of battery on a peace officer. One of these attacks was against an LA County Sheriff's deputy who was punched in the jaw, and the other attack was against another sheriff's deputy who had been attacked with a pencil. Anthony Rauder would waive his right to be present in the courtroom for the trial, and soon that trial would start. His attorney said that there was reasonable doubt surrounding the charges, adding that the jury should look for gaps in the evidence, which indicated wider gaps in the case. One was DNA testing done on cigarette butts found near to the scene of the crime, which came from an unidentified man. There's clearly reasonable doubt. Follow the law and find Anthony Rauder not guilty, he said. But the prosecutor said that the cigarette butts were a red herring. They were found in a public campsite and were in no way connected to Tristan's murder. The prosecutor told the jurors that Anthony had a pattern of stalking and preying on campers. They also said that they would show his phone was in the park on the day these crimes had been committed. But the defence pushed back, saying that his phone was usually hooked up to the Wi-Fi on most days, which is not the same as being there on just those specific days. The escalating pattern of violence was made clear. Most of the early attacks involved the use of what prosecutors described as an improvised shotgun, filled with pellets that did not cause anyone life-threatening injuries, adding that Anthony at some point upgraded to a sawed-off rifle. He's actively trying to do something that you know would cause death when he researches how to blow up a car by shooting out the gas tank. And then you see he shoots at a BMW, the LA County Deputy District Attorney said during the closing arguments. When it came to the murder of Tristan, the prosecution had been pushing for a first-degree murder conviction, but the jury was not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Anthony had acted with premeditation. He was subsequently convicted of murder in the second degree. In order to secure a conviction for first-degree murder, intention must be proven, whereas second degree does not have the same requirement. Anthony Rauder was also found guilty of 3 counts of attempted murder, Tristan's 2 children, and the man whose car had been shot at 4 days before the murder. He was also convicted of the 5 counts of burglary. The other shootings, which had been carried out with a different weapon that hadn't been found, he was found not guilty of.
You're a smart guy. And that's a dangerous combination, cold-blooded and smart. To show that, you're smart enough to waive your presence during the jury. That spoke volumes. Because you know how you've acted before. You know why you're in that chair. You know why you have a net over your head. Previously, you've threatened everybody in court. Everybody. You use profanity often towards people in a violent way. You stabbed a deputy. You punched a deputy. You had multiple incidents in jail. One as early as just, I think, less than 30 days before this trial. You had to be put in a chair where you are restrained because of how dangerous. You had to have a net put over you because you keep spitting at everybody. So this case wasn't just a cold-blooded case. You've continued to act violent. You've continued to be aggressive. And that's how you are. But again, you're smart. And that's a dangerous combination. And our jury was amazing. Our jury, they were careful. They were tedious. They caught even a couple mistakes that none of us caught. And they looked at this evidence in a very clinical way, exactly how I asked them to do. And again, the verdicts show that. And I have to commend my jury with regard to how they approached the task.
Tristan's widow, Erica, was in court with her family and Tristan's brother-in-law, Scott. "We lost the entire future we had planned," she said. "The family we were and the family we would have become." She said she wondered if in the chaos of the murder Tristan had time for one last thought or prayer. And if he did, he would have sent some sort of message out to the universe to please keep his girls safe. She asked the judge to give Anthony Rauder the maximum sentence allowed. The judge said, "I can say without hesitation that not only is Mr. Rauder a danger to the community, he's an extreme danger to the community. This case was chilling, it was violent, it was cold-blooded. There's absolutely no remorse. It's like somebody's worst nightmare. I've been around a long time as an attorney, as a judge. I've seen many, many dangerous, dangerous people, from gangsters up to domestic terrorists. I've seen everybody. And I can say that Mr. Rauder, you ranked amongst the top with regard to your dangerousness to the community." She then sentenced him to 119 years to life in prison. Erica would later file a $90 million lawsuit against various agencies, saying that not enough was done to warn the public that there had been a series of unsolved shootings. These agencies have confirmed they were aware of at least 7 unsolved shootings in Malibu Creek State Park, said the lawsuit. The agencies negligently failed to care and provide a safe space for Beaudette and his children, instead causing his death. The lawsuit said that agencies not wanting to bring negative publicity to the park didn't make people aware of what was going on. Had Tristan Beaudette known of the prior shootings, he would have never brought himself or his young daughters to camp, thereby putting his daughters and himself at severe risk. But lawyers for the county and state said that the Sheriff's Department, nor the State Parks Agency, were required to inform the public. The judge said that the Sheriff's Department could not be held accountable because Tristan never got in touch with them to ask if camping in the park was dangerous or posed a risk. In 2021, the judge told Erica she would need more evidence for her lawsuit and gave her 30 days for an amended one to be refiled. Another lawsuit would also be filed by Sheriff's Lieutenant James Royal, a 24-year Sheriff's Department veteran, which alleged that he had tried to ensure the public was informed about the shootings, and consequently his supervisors had retaliated against him and said it was an issue for the state parks to deal with and not them. The lawsuit alleged that he had tried to have a public safety statement issued, but this was turned down. It was also stated that after Tristan's murder, he was told by his supervisors to say at a town hall meeting that it was the Sheriff's Department's official position that the other shootings were not linked to Tristan's death.
Investigators are looking into a string of shootings that for now are not connected.
The suit alleged that after speaking out, he was transferred, stripped of his detective status, and subjected to an internal affairs investigation under false circumstances that subsequently damaged his reputation. His lawsuit was later dismissed. Although Anthony Rauder will never be freed from prison, that does little to undo the damage he caused. For Tristan's family, life was forever altered that night. In just a few days, he and his beloved wife and children were moving to start their next chapter. It's so unfair that that future never came to be. His legacy lives on in many ways. His former high school classmates set up a scholarship fund to honour him, and his memory also lives on in the lives of his children. Erica said that there is a void she feels every day, and keeping her family together in the wake of something like this is a burden that no one should have to bear. Making every decision, giving every hug, drying every tear, knowing that I'm it for them, while also knowing I'm not enough, because he should be here, and he would be here if it wasn't for what happened that night. I may never understand why our time together was cut short, but we had an incredible journey, and I'm so grateful for every day I had with him. For those of you that like to listen on the go, we now have our episodes in podcast form, and you can now find this via the link in our description box or by searching Truly Criminal Podcast on your podcasting platforms.